Are you a world builder? Do you want to build worlds? Find out how to build worlds today on The Right Stuff, coming up next right here on WPJC 104.5.
You are listening to the best, the only place to be on Tuesday night. That's right, you're listening to The Right Stuff, and you're at the right place at the right time. From England to Canada, from Detroit to the Poconos, we are showcasing Christian authors worldwide, giving you tips, tools, techniques, and resources for you, the writer, to hone and perfect your craft. Tune in every Tuesday at 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time right here on WPJC 104.5. And your host, Parker J. Cole.
Hi, and welcome to the show. You're at the right place at the right time. I'm your host, Parker J., and I am so excited you're able to join me today for this special edition of The Right Stuff. We are going to be talking about the craft of writing, and the best way to talk about that is to talk about world building. Are you a world builder? Is the reason why you like your speculative fiction is because you like to create new worlds. You want people to be immersed into the setting of your novel. You want the reader to smell the exotic plants, to taste the exotic food, and to see the strange exotic beings on your planet. If that really titillates you, you definitely don't want to miss this show as we talk about the world builders right here with my guest co-host and contributor today, Janine Ippolito, and she's going to be with us in just a few moments. I do want to let you know a couple of things. I can't believe that next week, Tuesday, my third book in the Sins of the Flesh series will be coming out. It's called Vengeful Vows, and you can get that today on pre-order. Just simply go to Amazon.com, type in Vengeful Vows with Parker J. Cole, and you can pre-order your copy today. Or go to my website, parkerjcole.com, click on the picture and click on the pre-order button, and you can pre-order a copy of Vengeful Vows today. You definitely want to get a copy of that. It is the end of the Sins of the Flesh series, so I'm really excited about how it's all going to turn out. So go ahead and get you a pre-order copy today. As always, I want to thank you so much for supporting The Right Stuff. If you want to call in and weigh on our topic, you certainly can. Simply call in at 646-668-8485 and then press 1 to be live on air. Or you can hit me on Twitter at Parker J. Cole, #RightStuff, with your questions and comments. We're going to go ahead and take a quick short break, and we'll be right back after these messages.
Don't go anywhere. More with Parker and her guests on The Right Stuff radio show. We'll be right back.
Engaging the culture's imagination through speculative fiction, the Untold Podcast produces audio fiction from a Christian worldview. Find us over at untoldpodcast.com, where we partner with authors to tell science fiction, fantasy, supernatural, and horror stories. Find links at untoldpodcast.com to subscribe via iTunes, Stitcher, and a variety of other platforms. Each month we produce high-quality audio fiction that's free to download and free to listen. Our submissions are open, and we're always looking to add another great story to over 24 hours of narrative entertainment. Find all of our audio fiction over at www.untoldpodcast.com.
Question: if you write a book, everybody will rush out to buy it. Obvious answer, no. If you were a celebrity or if you had a huge marketing budget, then maybe you can get a lot of exposure for your book. Another solution would be to check out joeytweets.com. joeytweets.com is a promotion and marketing service with access to over 1/3 of a million followers on Twitter. joeytweets.com has 3 packages available to fit any budget. That's joeytweets.com. joeytweets.com. Get some serious exposure for your books.
We're back, and you're hanging out with the queen of Tuesday night, Parker J. and her guests, right here on The Right Stuff.
Hi, and welcome back to the show. You're listening to The Right Stuff here on WPJC 104.5. Again, I am so glad you're able to join me. Like I said before the break, we are going to be talking about building worlds. If you are a world builder, if that really gets your writer juices going, you definitely don't want to miss this episode of The Right Stuff. The thing about world building is that it encompasses so much, and sometimes readers can tell if an author has really done their homework when it comes to world building building. And world building is essentially important for those of us who write speculative fiction because we want our readers, like I said before the break, to be immersed in the story. We want them to feel the weather. We want them to see the exotic powers that may encompass this world. Anything in this world that you want your readers to experience, you have to make sure you put it in there. But there are many different ways to do that. And with me is Janine Ippolito. She is a world builder herself, a lover of speculative fiction, a publisher, as well as a writer. So she's going to be helping us to build worlds today. So without further ado, I want to introduce our guest co-host and contributor, Janine Ippolito. Janine, how are you doing today?
I am doing fantastic. I'm doing really good. I'm excited to be here and excited to share.
And I'm excited to have you here as well, Janine. I want to thank you so much for taking time out your busy schedule to be with us today. I never take it lightly when our guest co-hosts and contributors are with us. So thank you so much for being with us and help us to learn how to build worlds.
I'm happy to get started. I probably could talk about this way more than you even want to hear. I could go on for hours about this. And warning, I'll try not to talk too fast. When I get excited, I tend to go super, super fast, and sometimes my students tell me, okay, you gotta slow down. We didn't hear anything. So
it won't be a problem because I know I talk fast as well. I've been trying to modulate my voice more and more because people do say, you do talk fast, Parker. So I totally understand. Don't let that bother you. If I can't understand what you're saying, I'll just say, hey, can you say that again? So it's okay. Really excited. And so without further ado, I want people to know about you. So go ahead and tell us who you are in your own words.
Okay, well, I'm a high school English teacher. I've been teaching for 7 years in various locations. English is pretty much what I do. I tend to be a huge nerd about languages. So I come from a different aspect than a lot of people because you picture an English teacher and you picture somebody who's like slamming a ruler on people's knuckles and getting on them about diagramming correctly and making sure that they properly appreciate the great works of literature. And I'm really more about inspiring my students and really helping them to see the beauty and stuff. And even like if they don't like something, to really know how to talk about it intelligently. And as I say, don't be a YouTube commenter. Really learn how to talk about literature both from a Christian perspective and also from an intelligent perspective. So huge nerd of that. I love languages. I love cultures. I have a degree in cross-cultural studies from Geneva College, so I pretty much love learning about cultures all over the world and subcultures and why people do what they do and what makes them the way they are. I'm a writer. I'm a sword fighter, actually. My husband and I do live-action role-playing through a sport called Dagger Here, and actually he developed it for kids, so we run an after-school program for kids, teaching them the sword fight and also teaching them how to be good warriors for Christ. And I'm a foodie. I love food. When I'm stressed out and have no time, I usually go into the kitchen and make a really elaborate dinner that I have no time to make, but it calms me down, and I watch cooking competition shows. So, yeah, I love to eat, and I love to, make food.
That is so funny that you mentioned that you like to eat, because last week we had Tosca Lee on the show, and she also said she was a foodie. And I absolutely love it. I'm wondering if maybe speculative fiction people have this thing in common where they like to eat as well. I think that's hysterical. And then, Janine, what I found fascinating is that you say you're a sword fighter. So do you do fencing like the Olympics, like they do the fencing Olympics, or there's some kind of different other sword fighting you do?
Well, I did fencing in high school, and I really enjoyed that. And when I went to college, they had this LARPing sort of thing going on with foam swords. And I was really interested in that because you could do full contact sparring. You could really hit somebody because the swords themselves are padded. And so, and that was called Dagger Here. It's part of this national organization. That's how I met my husband. That's how we fell in love. And and then he turned that into a youth group event and a youth after-school program. And so after college, when all of our friends said, we're done with this now, we're going to go and be adults, we're like, nah, we're just going to keep doing this for kids so we can go out there and keep fighting and keep working with the kids. So it's really a lot of fun.
Well, it sounds like fun. I wouldn't know what to do with a sword if someone gave it to me, so I wouldn't know what to do with it. So that's kind of exciting. And so you mentioned that you encourage kids. You say you don't do so much about the grammar, which is, of course, important, obviously, but that you try to encourage kids to first think outside the box. I kind of got that impression. And also to be intelligent about your literature, not just based off what you see off of YouTube, but make your own determinations about it. Why do you think it's important to teach kids that type of appreciation for the written word?
Oh, wow, yeah. Yeah, grammar is important, and I do get across to them the fact that we all have to use the same rules and standards because we can't communicate with each other otherwise. So I do pound it in there, and my favorite grammatical term is the gerunds. Gerunds are amazing. All grammarians have their favorite thing, and that's mine. But I really see kids these days, they don't really approach the written word from a sense of appreciating it. They're very much into a sense of what can I get out of it, or how quickly can I get through it, or how can it entertain me? And there's a lot of lack of awareness with them and maybe with the culture in general about how those words can affect you and how you can use those to affect others. And so I really encourage them to sort of dive into stuff, things they like and things that they don't like, and to be able to look at it from a Christian worldview and from a worldview of what makes up great works of literature, and just how to approach it intelligently and how to have respect for it, and to not just see it as something that serves them, but something that is there to maybe shape them and something they can use to really reach out and shape and work with others and connect with others.
I think that's commendable, Janine, because the written word is being used to manipulate people. It's being used to cast a bad light, especially like during the elections right now. The written word and video and all these other things that kind of titillate our senses to make snap decisions about people, they're being used. So it's good that you're giving that discernment to your students. Like I say, just because you see something, evaluate it for yourself. Make sure this is something that you can agree to or don't disagree to. So I think that's commendable. I really appreciate hearing that about you. So let me ask you this question. So you talked about a lot about how you like speculative fiction. You could talk about world building for hours. So go ahead. You kind of already gave us a little hint of this question, but what are some of the other books that interest you as a reader? Is it just speculative fiction, or do you go into other genres as well?
Oh, my first love besides speculative was historical fiction. I was a huge fan of Little House on the Prairie books, and part of that was the descriptions of the food and the cultures and all those things. So I still love the world building aspects, but yeah, I love the historical fiction a lot. I love diving into things, and I liked books, again, that were written from other cultural perspectives. Even now, I enjoy books that are written by authors from other countries or from authors who kind of have a multicultural background. So I love that experience of getting to look into the eyes of someone else and really experience life the way they do. So, yeah.
That sounds pretty good, because a lot of times right now people tend to want to view the world only through their perspective or through their eyes. And I think it's really important to have that multicultural aspect. You don't necessarily have to change your whole worldview for it, but you can at least see, okay, I see why this person feels this way because this particular culture or this particular ethnic group or this particular group of people, whatever they are, even some people here in the U.S., you know how the U.S. may have a certain culture about it, but even in the U.S. or subcultures that exist, and just to know how that works for you. And so I guess that kind of goes to my next question about how does your interest in those type of books, how does that reflect your love for world building?
Oh, I love world building because I really see it as the heart of speculative fiction. We have this great opportunity to really, as I see it, as Christians, to image Christ, to kind of show a little bit of God's creative ability in working with our world. So we have this ability to put our worldview into the stories and to tackle those deep and hard issues in a way that other stories may not, because we can shape the cultures, we can shape the histories, we can ask what if about everything and then build it to just really create these interesting conflicts and interesting narratives that you just can't get in any other genre of fiction. And so, yeah, the best.
It's funny you say that, because I do think, and you can, of course, weigh in on this too, speculative fiction writers, do they have a God complex? Is that why you think that we like that type of thing, the world building, because we have a God complex?
I think it's a temptation. I see that a lot in, I can see it in some books I've read and things like that, especially with the way that you can shape things. There's a really easy temptation to just use it to push your own agenda a lot. And I see that more in speculative fiction than a lot of other things, actually. It's one of the things that sometimes turns me off of certain books, is because I feel like the author is just making this whole world just to kind of preach their own ideas and everything, when I'm really just interested in the story itself. And I think there can be that if you don't have a sense of humility. It's that humility in that sense of, wow, I am doing the tiniest bit of something that, like, God did in 6 days for real. And instead of taking it as something where, oh, I get to control the world, mwahaha, taking it as a sense of, I get to have this tiny, tiny bit of experience of what God does, what God did at the beginning of the world, and what God does every day sustaining the world. And that is just incredible. For me, when I'm world building, I'm just like, wow. And God, you made all these people, you made all of these things and these incredibly complicated plants and animals and everything, and I'm just swamped trying to figure out one aspect of it. And so it really gives me a sense of the immensity of God and how awesome he is. And so I think approaching it from that level of humility is a better tack than trying to think of it as I get to, like, twist the fate of everyone.
It's funny that you say that, too, because I think I'm working on a fantasy now that has this huge overreaching arc. It's going to take some time to even outline, because there's a lot involved, because I'll be creating my own cultures and everything. And so I won't lie to you. There is sort of like this complex that's creeping up into me, like, this is my world, and you are going to do what I say. So I'm glad that you tempered that desire with humility, like, wow, God really did this, and I'm just mimicking this on paper. Because we, and I love that. I remember there was an episode of, I don't know if you even watched Stargate Atlantis, Janine, but there was an episode on Stargate Atlantis where they have found this computer, and they thought it was a game. The people on the Atlantis Atlantis thought it was a game. And so they're playing this game, but they had no idea that this game wasn't really a game. It was actually connected to these worlds. And so they were actually controlling the people, and they put all kind of stuff in there. And so even when they found out that it wasn't a game, that it was real people they were dealing with, they still dealt with it because the people revered them as a god. And so I could just see how that can just appeal to people, So I'm glad that we can do this on paper, because if we had that capability, who knows what we would do to some people.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. Oh, go ahead and expand on that.
I definitely see that, and even with the written word, that takes a sense of humility. And, part of being a really good world builder is fighting against, for me, I'm kind of a control freak. It's a gift and a curse that keeps me really organized at school. But also it means, sometimes you really want to make things set the way they go, and sometimes have to step back and say, I got to pray over this. I got to see what God wants to take this story. I got to see what works for it, and not just try to make it fit my own schemes and everything. And again, with the humility and understanding, this is going to affect readers. And that's what I tell my students. It's called, writing is a selfless endeavor. And we like to see it as, we get to express ourselves. But those words have power to affect readers. And as writers, we have to take that responsibility for also writing things that are good and true, and, not just doing crazy things to mess with the reader's head or just because we like it, but to really make excellent stories to bless them and to touch hearts, and if, to make them cry because we killed somebody off, do it for the right reasons because it works for the story and not just sort of out of that God complex or whatever.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, and I like how you said writing is a selfless endeavor, and to be responsible with your writing, because we do see the effects of words. We do see the effect of words all the time. We can see major books that have made huge impacts on people, and people have adopted lifestyles based off of books and have done a lot of things. So there is a lot of power with those words, and I like how you said we need that responsibility, even though we're writing fiction. That's very important that you say that. And so what we're going to do is take a quick short break, and we're talking to Janine Ippolito. She is a publisher, a writer, a teacher, a student, a lover of God, and a servant of Jesus, and she is here with us today to help us how to build worlds. If you are a world builder, you definitely don't want to miss this show. definitely call in if you have any questions at 646-668-8485 and then press 1 to be live on air, or hit me on Twitter at Parker J. Cole, #RightStuff, with your questions and comments. We're going to go ahead and take a quick short break, and we'll be right back after these messages.
Don't go anywhere. More with Parker and her guests on the Right Stuff Radio Show. We'll be right back.
Have you read the latest issue of SORMAG Digital, the award-winning literary magazine for multicultural readers and writers? SORMAG Digital is available quarterly and showcases interviews with the best authors in multicultural literature. SORMAG Digital features craft and business articles for those interested in writing. If you're looking for a good book, check out our book reviews on what's hot in multicultural literature. For writers looking for new readers to get in front of, SORMAG Digital is the perfect place to introduce your book. We offer advertising spaces that fit your promotional budget. Get your free subscription on SORMAG.com or order a print issue on MagCloud.com. If you would like more information about SORMAG Digital, check us out on SORMAG.com or contact us at SORMAG@yahoo.com. SORMAG Digital is the magazine for multicultural readers and writers.
God gives humans the gift of making amazing stories to glorify Him. At speculativefaith.com, our ministry is to help fans explore fantasy, science fiction, supernatural stories, and beyond from an intentional and biblical Christian perspective. We share daily articles and have extensive archives tackling hot topics like end times beliefs, the art of writing, creative excellence in the Christian subcultures, discernment, sex, magic, Harry Potter, and space aliens and the Bible. If you are a parent or anyone else with a discriminating palate, our reviewers explore fantastical novels, movies, television, and games in light of God's beauty, goodness, and truth. Want to find Christian stories? The Spec Faith Library lists every fantastical novel we can find from a Christian author. It's all part of our mission to discern, engage, and enjoy fantastical human creativity in honor of our Creator, Jesus Christ. SpeculativeFaith.com, exploring fantastical stories for God's glory.
We're back, and you're hanging out with the queen of Tuesday night, Parker J. and her guests, right here on The Right Stuff.
Hi, and welcome back to the show. You're listening to The Right Stuff here on WPJC 104.5. Again, I'm so glad you're here with me, able to join me for this wonderful edition of The Right Stuff as we talk about how to build worlds. And it's absolutely fascinating, this topic that we're going to be talking about with Janine. And Janine, once again, thank you so much for joining me. I wanted to ask this question, Janine. How important is world building to the story?
I'd say it's essential to speculative fiction. And I say that with a caveat because I know that there's really sort of the fringe parts of speculative fiction where there's just a little hints of something weird. And that's legit too. So I'm not trying to disrespect that genre, or the one that just kind of, puts in one ghost in the story or one little thing that's different. But even then, you have to think through, because speculative fiction is asking what if. My concept of world building is anything from building a whole fantasy world, an epic fantasy, or even just building one race within a world. Building, saying, what if, this world, or what if our country had this extra race in it, or what if these people had extra powers, or what if this happened here? All of that still requires thought, and all of that is still requiring that question of what if and making things fit together tightly. And in speculative fiction, one of the things that will lose readers the quickest is if there's massive gaps in the world building, if the powers don't make sense, if the civilization doesn't make sense. They'll forgive some things. As a reader, I'll forgive some things if I really like the characters, but after a while, it just disenchants me because I'm there partly to escape. And if the escape and the world isn't fully there, isn't fully solid, then what am I reading it for?
It's funny that you say that, because what happens is readers won't be aware of it, because it's not that they're actually looking for it. It's that as they're reading your story, they know that something's wrong. Wait a minute, if he's in a world of water, why does he have the world to, create concrete? The power to create concrete or something like that in the water world. And so you want to make sure that world aspect is there. So we're talking about world building, and what are some of the pitfalls authors should watch out for? I know for myself, when I did my first fantasy book under Parker Payne, it was a contemporary Japanese Asian fantasy, and I was a little worried because I was coming out of my own cultural norm and going to a Japanese culture. So I wanted to see maybe if I had made those pitfalls or not. So go ahead, let our authors know what pitfalls should they look out for when they're trying to build their world.
Well, the first one, and this is one that I'm really guilty of, and it's if you open my book, it says, I began this book because of a mistake, and it was my mistake. And for me, I'm kind of a world-building, recovering addict. I had actually built at one time 16 fantasy races for a world. And I realized and I was building this with a friend because I do a lot of collaborative writing. So we had built these races, and we kind of realized with the help of my husband, he's like, you're never going to actually get to write this story because you're building so much. This is ridiculous. And I'm like, okay, you have a point there. So it's really easy to get lost in the world building and sort of like let that overwhelm you and take over the story. And so my policy with world building is, in general, build as you go method. Build as you need to. Figure the things out that you need to figure out at the beginning, and that depends on the person and what you're doing, because the broad range of speculative fiction. Urban fantasy is going to be different from an Asian fantasy, is going to be different from an epic fantasy, but build what you need to at the beginning to get started, but then try to focus on your plot and then build as you need to and pause as you need to work on the plot and the characters, and make sure that the world building doesn't take over your story. There's some things like epic fantasy where they can sort of break this rule because they really want to feature the world, but even then you need to have a good sense of story to drive it. Otherwise, it's really easy to get lost. So that's one major pitfall I see. Another one I see is not building enough, not exploring enough, because speculative fiction readers, we're here for a reason. We want to read really cool stuff. And so, within your genre, again, if you're doing sort of a more kind of a ghost story kind of thing or paranormal, you're probably going to have to build less, but still explore all the cool things in it and really spend time brainstorming. And that was something that I said, if you don't have time to do much with writing, which I don't always have time because I'm really busy, brainstorm and never stop imagining, never stop thinking about really cool things you can do with it and how you can make cool things integrate into your plot. So it's kind of the balance between the two things there is don't do too much, but don't do too little either. And then if you're going to talk about world building within our world, so sort of an urban fantasy where you're working with the existing world and adding something to it, making sure that your whatever race or species or superpowered superheroes are in it, that they actually make sense within the existing world. And that's something else, be actually aware of what's going on in the world and then how this extra thing would add on to it. And some people don't do that because sometimes they get impatient with, I have to figure out world events and study world cultures and actually figure out how this government would like these special people being here or wouldn't like them. But it really helps things work a lot smoother with the plot and make it, ironically, more believable. You're trying to make your readers believe your crazy, awesome, weird stories. And so those are the ones I'd say, yeah.
I think that you mentioned about making sure that you still concentrate on it, because even though it can consume you, like you said, you have 16 races you had to create it can consume you, which is great because it means that you're very immersed in your world. You don't want to leave out that detail. And sometimes, like I said, readers will pick it up because it's not there. If it was there, they wouldn't pick up on it. So we didn't get into this a little bit. I know I sent you some things beforehand, but now I want to kind of get into the minutia of world building real quickly. And I know that goes into your book. And so before we get into your book, kind of go into what are some of the major basic things authors need to think about as they create their world. So let's say they want to create a fantasy world or a sci-fi world. What basic elements should they remember or should they start thinking about? Let's say they can't get to, what color will the High Lord be when what color clothes will the High Lord wear when he walks into the temple of the square? I can't think of anything else right now, but not that type of minutia, but what are some of the basic elements that an author who is trying to world build for their fantasy, sci-fi, steampunk, dieselpunk, whatever, their story, what basic elements should they automatically have together?
Okay, well, partly it depends on your subgenre of speculative fiction. Figuring out the planets may not be so important if your entire world building is on one world or one city, unless it features astronomy. So there's a couple different methods of world building, and if you're doing something that's sort of science fiction where it's out in space, then you're going to want to figure out where they're going to and those physical elements more. If you're going to figure out, if you're focused on a continent, then you're going to want to figure that out more. But what I do that's a bit different than most people is I say you should figure out the worldview and culture of your characters first and what's motivating them. So I kind of come at it from both angles. It's really natural to say, okay, I got to figure out where they're at and what their spaceship looks like and where they're going, and that's all really important. In terms of your plot, in terms of what's going to motivate your characters and what's going to propel those really interesting, deep storylines, is going a little bit deeper and figuring out your character and figuring out what they believe in and what they're trying to go for and figuring out where their culture is coming from. And my books and my world-building method is based on figuring out the culture of your people groups. So kind of an inside-out perspective more than an outside-in. What are your main
people? Let's go into that then, Janine. Let's go into that then, because it's talking about your book anyway. So let's go ahead and go into that, because I can see how that can be almost vitally important, because it helps determine what the motivations are for the people's actions in that story. So go ahead. Since it's already your book, because I read your book, it's absolutely wonderful. So since you already talked about that, go right ahead and delve into your book then. So tell our listeners what your book is about and how that relates to that world-building aspect you're referring to.
Okay, so I call my book Deep World Building for Busy or Impatient Writers, because one thing about it is it's pretty short, and a lot of world building things you do are like, I've gone online and seen a long list, endless lists of world building questions and world building theories and world building books that are like figured out all the minutia, and I'm like, I don't have time for this. This is great. I'm sure this is going to help me, but I don't have time for this. I have an hour a day maybe to write sometimes. And so I was looking for this guide that would really go to the heart of things. And so this book goes to the worldview of the cultures in your story. It asks you, okay, what are the major people groups in your story, and what are they fighting about? What motivates them? What's their worldview? What are their key beliefs? The first opening chapter of it is actually asking, what's the religion of your culture, of your city, of your place? What is their core belief system? And that's pretty different from most places. A lot of places don't even like to think about religion because, we don't want to alienate readers. We don't want to bring that stuff into it. But knowing the worldview, knowing that belief system, even if it's atheistic, if it's agnostic, pantheistic, whatever, that will really help motivate a lot of the other things in your story and in your character and how they interact with that. And so it gets to those key motivations of plot again and kind of brings it back to the people and characters in the story, and it motivates your world building around that and what would naturally occur. Okay, if they believe this is sacred, this tree is sacred, then guess what? They're not going to use those trees. Well, what if those trees are everywhere? Well, then they have to figure out something else. So that's going to affect technology, and that's going to affect where they can do agriculture and all sorts of things. And so it goes to the key motivations and beliefs of the people groups and what they want to do and what are their agendas, and then goes out from there to build these organic cultures based on that.
I think that's brilliant, because as I was listening to you give your explanation about if you determine from the motivations of the people of the story, then let's say if you have a culture that doesn't believe in eating flesh, like Vulcans. In Star Trek, Vulcans are vegetarians. They don't eat animal flesh. They used to, they no longer do. And so that their motivations may be differently towards eating flesh, for example, okay? And then I can see like someone who if they see someone eating a dog or a cat or whatever, just something, an animal of some sort, and they're all freaked out by like, how could you eat that? Why would you do that? You're in a sacred place of no killing, stuff like that. I can see how that really works, and I like that. And so you talk about the culture. So the culture, let's say, affects their food. If you're going to build from the inside out, meaning building from the motivations of the people, the cultural aspects of the people or your race that you're involved with. What about competing factions? How do you build with competing factions?
Oh, well, that's fantastic, because then you have conflict for a story. One of the best things about this is that once you know those core beliefs, you can start finding all these reasons to have story and plot, because if they're competing with each other, if they have diverse beliefs, then you have all kinds of opportunities to pull stories organically from the plot or from the world building itself and from those races, and lots of opportunities to really explore these races and cultures organically. And I love that. One thing I encourage in the book is, go ahead and have two races with different religions, or have two races with different governments. I mean, why not? That'll create conflict, and that creates a story. And to sort of kind of dive into those messy issues and those messy ideas, and to bring them out. And then that's something that people get kind of nervous about, and I recognize that. My background being, it was cultures. I did some mission stuff. I did a lot of cross-theology stuff, so I'm pretty comfortable with those things. A lot of people were kind of uncertain. So when I did the book, I said, okay, let's make this so that anybody can just open this up and get an entry telling them about a religion or about a type of government without giving them like a 5-page article on it. And so I have these entries where it has like, for example, totalitarianism. It explains what it is. It explains examples of it in fiction, and then how you can use this in your story to further your plot. So, okay, this kind of government works really good in dystopian stories. This kind of government will probably work pretty good if you have a race that you want to be kind of more natural, really worshiping nature kind of stuff. This one works for this story. And so giving writers the tools in there, not just to read like a really long article about a religion, but little short entries to give them tools to make decisions in their own stories and then get back to writing. That's the biggest focus, is go there, go deep, think about these hard things, and then go back to working on your own story. Because, again, it's for busy and impatient writers. I'm one of those, since I'm a full-time teacher and I run a business and I write, I don't have a whole lot of time to do all the writing, craft reading I want. So I wrote a book that was short and sweet and will get you where you're going so you can get back to writing.
Again, Janine's book is called World Building from the Inside Out, and it also has a workbook included, which I think was absolutely brilliant as well, because sometimes you can read the book, but then you need to work out those problems. So if you're actually building your world, like she said, from the inside out, building with the motivations first and then building from that. And I like how you use how if you have different, like, cultural beliefs or government hierarchies, like someone who has more of a democratic government, that particular race has a democratic government, this particular race has a totalitarian government, how do those factions clash? And then you start to see, oh, okay, I can have them clashing on this planet because they both want to take over this planet that has these natural resources. I'm going sci-fi right now, but they have all these natural resources and stuff like that. So I really like this unique take of world building, so building from the inside out. Basically get the guts first and then put the guts inside the body. That's what it seems like you're doing. I just got a weird image in my head from that. So I like that idea. I like how you do that, and it does have a workbook. And so I want our listeners to know, if you want to go ahead and get a copy of Janine Ippolito's book, again, it's called World Building from the Inside Out. It's a book as well as a workbook, and you can get a copy of that today on Amazon.com. You can go to Amazon and type in World Building from the Inside Out, and you'll also see the handy, nifty workbook as well. We're going to go ahead and take a quick short break. When we come back, more Janine about world building and well as uncommon universes. We'll talk more about that in just a
Don't go anywhere. More with Parker and her guests on the Right Stuff Radio Show. We'll be right back.
You are a dreamer and creator. You are a builder and destroyer of worlds. You are a starship pilot, a dragon rider, a galactic marine, at home in the company of elves. And you get a lot of strange looks from the other authors at that Christian Writers Conference. You are a Christian speculative fiction author, and we say, welcome home. Realm Makers 2016, the only conference for Christian fantasy and science fiction authors, featuring classes and sessions with world-class authors and industry professionals like author Tosca Lee, agent and publisher Steve Lobby, and many more, with keynotes by 4-time Christie Award-winning author Thomas Locke. Realm Makers 2016, July 28th through 30th at Villanova University, Pennsylvania. Register now at realmmakers.com. Use the promo code RADIO for a special discount.
Hi, is your book club in need of some fresh and exciting questions to ask club members and authors at your next book club meeting? Literations, the book conversation game, is 70 thought-provoking questions to really get into an in-depth discussion about the books you and your club members are reading. These questions really get into the characters, the storyline, and into the author's head. These questions may just give you and your book club members a whole new way to get into a new conversation, a literation. Literations is also a great set of tools for bloggers, interviewers, and authors to use a discussion question. Are you ready to get lit? Please visit our website at litversations.com, litversation.com. And please like our Facebook page at Simply Said Reading Accessories. Thank you.
Hi, and welcome back to the show. You're listening to The Right Stuff here on WPJC 104.5. So glad you are able to join me as we talk about building worlds. It is so important to speculative fiction writers to know how to build your world. And Janine Ippolito, who is our guest co-host today, she has a unique way of doing that. Instead of building your world from the outside in, build your world from inside out. And so she's helping us understand that today. And Janine, once again, thank you so much for joining us on the show. We did get a comment. We do have a caller calling in from Pennsylvania. Heather, how are you doing today?
Good. How about you?
I'm fine. Thank you. Did you have a question or comment for our guest?
Yes, I do. Thank you for putting this call through. Janine, I was wondering about the villain's journey. I know so much talks about the protagonist's journeys, but isn't it true that the hero is only as formidable, as basically the villain? I was wondering if you touch on that as your book or if there's any advice that you've picked up along the way.
Well, with regards to the villain's journey, my book mostly focuses on world building, and so it takes a more broader view of different cultures and how you can work with different races. I have another book actually in the works called Characterization from the Inside Out, and that does a lot more focusing on individual characters and how you can work with their motivations through that whole journey as well. But in terms of the villain, I absolutely agree. They have to be as strong as the protagonist, or almost as strong, to create a compelling story. And certainly part of world building is making sure that your character has a lot of formidable obstacles, and the world can provide that a lot. Dystopian uses the government a lot as the main source of external conflict, and so that is part of world building. Or you can use the culture and the protagonist fighting against the culture itself. And so in those regards, you can definitely have world building integrated with your villain's journey as well, and show maybe how the culture, how the race kind of created this villain or influenced them to turn to the dark side.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I was just curious because I'm obviously in your work, such as like the villain hoarding tons of, a special emerald or something. Certainly couldn't that come into play as well with the world building, with his, location in, say, the galaxy somewhere?
Oh, certainly. That's a little more of the outside part of world building. That's a little more of the top-down locational approach, but that certainly can have an aspect in the villain's goals and what they're trying to achieve. But again, those are external goals. You also need internal goals for your villains as well as for your protagonists, and that's where a lot of the core motivations can come in, and that's where some of the inside-out stuff, the motivations, the religion, their experiences of that can really tie into things. So thank you so much.
Thank you for taking my call as well, and nice to speak to you as well. Thank you both.
Thank you, Heather, for calling in. Really appreciate your call. And I think Heather really touched on something, Janine, when she talks about that, because it's those little nuances. Like she said, the villain's journey just has to be just as dynamic as the hero's journey and be able to have that aspect. And I like how you said, if you're using this inside-out method of world building, those motivations tend to come in, and then your villain is created. Like you said, you had two different cultures, like a totalitarian government or a democratic government, or let's say a shady democratic government that is masquerading a totalitarian government masquerading as a democratic government, all these kind of things. So Heather really brought a nice aspect to the conversation, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, definitely. And that villain journey is really important. So, yeah, I'm very grateful for the call.
Yeah, I'm glad she called in, too, because it brings me to my point about world building and how important it is, because a lot of people do work on the hero, and nowadays people are working on the anti-hero because for some reason we don't like perfect heroes anymore. We want heroes that look a lot like us, and I think that's a shame almost, because where would we be without Superman who actually cared? What if Superman didn't, like the new Superman is kind of darker because when you look at him, he destroyed the city. And back in the day with old Superman, as an example, he wouldn't try to destroy the city. He would pull it out from people and pull it out away from the innocent people so they wouldn't be hurt. But nowadays, he just fought in the midst of the city and buildings collapsing, falling down over the place, innocents getting in trouble, So I like Heather's question because it's very on point for our topic here. So as we talk
very
more
much
about,
so.
Yeah, so as we talk more about world building, and, people get your book, how do readers respond to getting your book? Because there is a workbook attached to it, as well as the book that you read, the narrative that you read. How have readers responded to that?
It's been really great. It's been really amazing because I basically started writing this out saying, good month or two researching the market and trying to see, is this already out there? Because I'm pragmatic. I don't really like to reinvent the wheel. So if someone already, did this exact thing in this exact way, I'd be like, okay, awesome. I'm going to focus on something else. Mm-hmm. And seeing this niche and then just kind of working on it in my free hours and then seeing how it helps people, that has been really immensely a blessing to me. I'm a teacher at heart. I love making curriculum that actually helps people to get stories onto paper. I'm a reader. I love reading good stories. And so anything that really inspires people to write and to master those concepts that might just be kind of intimidating them from going deeper and really building strong stories, hey, I'm all for it. So it's just been really humbling and really a blessing for me to see that.
We got a couple of comments, Janine, from people, because I sent a question out to our audience basically asking what world do they like. And the world I love is the Asgard from the movie Thor. I love that world. Every time I watch that movie, I am blown away by the world.
Oh, yeah.
Mind you, I like the story, but I love space, and I love, oh, my gosh, the way they captured that. It just, I couldn't hardly breathe because it captured the beauty of it. Even though it's CG, it didn't matter because the world was so beautiful. I couldn't breathe. Yeah, Thor was in there too. That always helps. But at the same time, I did like the world. Okay, and so I asked our listeners basically. I said, "What favorite world did you like growing up? What was your favorite world?" And so Deborah from Sweetwater says, "Wow, I have so many: Narnia, Merrick, Unday, Celestia, Darinia, Peru, the land, and Nalu. Also love any world with elves, dragons, and other creatures. My all-time favorite world is Elviria." Deborah, thank you so much for your comment. And then a fellow author, David Johnson, says, "Honestly, I love the world in my Kadesh Chronicles books. I have spent decades building it, and I feel as home there as I do in the real world." And that's David Johnson, author of Kadesh Chronicles. Thank you, Dave, for your comment. And then Leah from Michigan, Fowlerville, Michigan, says, "My first bedtime story was The Hobbit. So for me, Middle Earth feels like home." And again, Leah, thank you so much for your comment. And then Amanda says, "I just like Thor." In her comment. I totally agree with you, Amanda. Thank you so much for your comment. And so you hear these responses and you see, people like the world. Even though we like the characters and story plot, that world we love just escaping to that. And so that's why I wanted to get just let our listeners know that we do hear them, and that's why world building is so important. So let me ask you this next question. Authors may be listening to us right now, and, your readers have responded really well to it. And so by the very uniqueness of this book is the fact that you are a real world building from the inside out. Is that what the uniqueness is coming from?
Yeah, it's coming from that, from the sense of just going in there and making things deep and making them easy to use at the same time, because it's really easy to, you can find really deep stuff, but it takes a long time. I mean, again, I have a college degree in cross-cultural studies, so I've gone deep, and it's taken me 4 years. And it's really easy to kind of hit the surface stuff, but not really understand how to use it. You get, massive lists of questions, but no idea of how they're going to work in a story world. And so you get all these great and cool things that will build these awesome worlds, but then they kind of just sit there next to your plot and don't really go together. And so mine seeks to integrate them together so that you can build those awesome worlds and all those cool things that your readers can just fall in love with, but also make it relevant to your plot. And so you tell these great, unique stories that really celebrate the speculative fiction genre of what if and imagining these incredible places.
We're going to go ahead and take a quick short break, and we'll be coming back for the last segment of our show about world builders. You still have time to call in and weigh in. Simply call in at 646-668-8485, and then press 1 to be live on air. Hit me on Twitter at Parker J. Cole, #Write with your questions and comments. We're going to go ahead and take a quick short break. We'll be right back after these messages.
Are you a reader looking for more compelling Christian fiction? Maybe something a little more edgy or a bit more real? Are you tired of most Christian fiction shying away from the truth and settling for a rose-tinted view of the world and its issues? Or are you an author who has a compelling story to tell, but you're afraid it doesn't jive with today's brand of Christian or secular fiction? Are you tired of Christian publishers telling you that your content is too edgy? Or maybe you've tried submitting your content under the radar to secular publishers only to be told your themes are a bit too religious. We invite you to take a look at the Crossover Alliance. We are an online publishing company that specializes in edgy Christian speculative fiction with Christian themes and real-world content. Our company is formed from authors and readers just like you who are breaking into the mainstream and Christian markets with this compelling genre. Head over to the www.thecrossoveralliance.com for all the details on who we are, what we do, and what we accept. Right now, if you sign up for our email newsletter, you'll receive a free digital copy of our first short story anthology. Check us out today and help us spread the word about the Crossover Alliance, where light shines brighter in the darkness.
We're back, and you're hanging out with the queen of Tuesday night, Parker J. and her guests, right here on The Right Stuff.
Hi, and welcome back to the show. You're listening to The Right Stuff here on WPJC 104.5. Again, I'm so glad you're able to join me today for this edition. We have been talking to you who are the world builder, you who create new races and new cultures and new ideas in government. We have been talking to you today about how to build your world from the inside out. If you want to get a copy of Janine's very helpful, very inspiring book, if you are in a writer's block and you have no idea how to get your world going, once you read Janine's book, World Building from the Inside Out, and get the accompanying workbook, you will no longer have writer's block because your mind is going to explode with ideas. So definitely go today, go to Amazon. It's available there. Again, this World Building from the Inside Out has a beautiful picture of a heart that's almost fixed because there's little grid lines going because you're building it from the inside out. Definitely go today. Love of my sister today. Get a copy of her book, World Building from the Inside Out today. And Janine, I was playing the sponsorship we got from Crossover Alliance, is the publisher that publishes edgy Christian speculative fiction. And I want to talk about your publishing company, Uncommon Universes. I find that quite fascinating. And I want to kind of ask you some questions about it before we get to the end of our show. So what inspired you to start Uncommon Universes Press?
Okay, well, it kind of had an interesting start. I was researching different kinds of publishing for my own work and for a bunch of different people's work. I do a lot of writing coaching and editing work on the side. And while I'm always there for the author saying, okay, we got to make sure this is clean and really good, it's a small market for Christian speculative fiction and for those areas. And it's not that people don't want it, but it's growing. With Role Makers and Crossover Alliance such, it's growing, but it's still trying to get its feet there. And I was researching indie publishing, and I was researching different things, and I started talking with my husband and some friends of mine. My husband and I have a background as entrepreneurs and doing different business endeavors successfully, and I have the experience in editing and organization, all of that. I had a friend who now has her degree in illustration and graphic design, another friend who's master's degree, and was like, okay, I can do acquisitions. And so we prayed about it a lot because, it's a lot of extra work, and then decided to go ahead with it, had the full support of my husband, and so I spent Christmas break on the phone and building the foundation of the press and getting everything in line. And the real heart that all three of us have in for this, it's myself and two friends, Sarah White and Julia Busco. the passion is to bring stories with awesome, weird world building, great characters, and a Christian worldview to the marketplace, to the Christian marketplace as well as to the secular marketplace. And we really kind of want to take risks on different stories that are just kind of quirky enough or crazy enough or big enough or odd enough that maybe they don't get the reception other places. Maybe the CBA publishing houses aren't quite sure what to do with them or where to go with them. All three of us are massive fans of world building. We're all huge geeks who have a lot of ties to different aspects of the market and to conventions and everything. And so we're like, you know what, we're going to get together and kind of with our powers combined, make this press to get really cool fiction out there from a Christian worldview. Really great world building that not a lot of places will take chances on all the time. And so that's what we're really looking to put out there is, great world building from a Christian worldview. Not necessarily name-dropping Jesus all the time. Doesn't have to have a conversion scene in it or any of that, but looking for redemptive themes and really timeless concepts along with, again, really cool, awesome worlds.
I like that because the Christian speculative fiction genre is rising. I did a broadcast on a YouTube TV show this past Saturday talking about the rise of Christian speculative fiction, and there's a need for it. And I like it because I think it calls to the need of people who want more realistic fiction. And then a lot of the secular speculative fiction, they're not always. Sometimes they have mixed messages. Like I enjoyed Avengers, the Age of Ultron. I enjoyed that, and not that speculative fiction is just superheroes. I'm not saying that, but right now being a geek is popular and more commonplace. Whereas before, because I was a geek before everyone else became a geek, okay? And I know my geekdom, okay?
Hey, so, we are superhero geeks here. We are a Marvel family here, so, you know, we get that.
And I enjoyed it, but they kind of gave you this idea that, you know, this artificial intelligence having a belief in God and thinking he's doing God's will as archaic, and you couldn't help but see that subtle underlying thing. And so I'm glad that Uncommon Universes is going to be pushing great speculative fiction and Christian speculative fiction, not necessarily having to have the Lord as central character in your story or have a conversion story, something like that, but you can discuss those other themes that are so involved with the Christian worldview. Like I mentioned themes of identity, about, you know, just everything you could possibly think of that people have questions about with Uncommon, with speculative fiction. So you have this press, you're getting these things together. So are you currently accepting submissions?
Yes, we definitely are. One of our goals actually is to make sure we get a couple authors this summer to have out for next year. We definitely started this to want to really build a business and to really get other authors involved in this. So this isn't sort of like, there's some presses that they're awesome and they put like a book out a year or something and it's sort of like a small thing. But when I went into this, my husband, who's a great guy, great Christian guy, he's like, you're doing this to make money, right? And I'm like, yeah, because he's like, we're both Christian school teachers. We don't have big salaries here. And he's all about the ministry, but he's also about, you know, we need to use our resources wisely. And we want to, if you're going to bring other people on this, we want to actually be able to, you know, help them out, you know, financially too, to actually make money on this. And so we definitely have that business side of things as well, where we're checking into marketing, all of those things, and really working on that side of it. And so we're taking submissions, full manuscripts. We'll be at Realm Makers, the Christian Speculative Fiction Conference. And you'll also find us online at uncommonuniverses.com. And we're looking for great world building. We're looking for crazy, crazy ideas. So the only thing that, I'd hate to say this because I love to say we take all submissions and they're all great, but we're definitely looking for new twists on things. So a person with a sword going on a mountain might not be crazy enough for us. If you're looking for some ideas, we're currently doing an online serial that's one of my things that I had out, and it deals with a new twist on vampires and the idea of them being this perversion of this blood curse illness that people are born with, and decided that because they had this illness, suddenly They needed to not just be healthy, but be better than everyone else and do crazy, twisted things with that. So we got vampires. We have a story on the docket that like steampunk and alchemists crashed in with classic Celtic fairy mythology, like the old school fairies that you don't really want to meet in the dark alley. So we're really looking for those really interesting world building aspects and stories that, again, you see all the time in secular fiction. Don't always see it in Christian secular fiction, but we definitely want to give those stories a shot.
And I want to let our listeners know once again, if they want to send a submission to you, where can they find you online?
uncommonuniverses.com. One word.
I like the name. What's the story behind the name?
Well, actually, that goes back to another venture I had. I'm one of those people that always kind of doing new ventures and projects, and if they don't work, I just keep at it and try other things. And I had this idea years and years ago about launching a kind of website. At that time, it was for Christian book reviews, like reviewing speculative fiction from a Christian perspective. And then I was kind of gotten this idea. I'm like, this sounds really cool. And then I found speculative faith, and I'm like, hey, they're already doing this. That's awesome. They do a great job. I am going to support them. And then I'll just kind of hang on to this name and see if I ever need to use it in the future. And then here about 6 years later, we're looking at a name for the press. And my husband said, wait, has anyone taken Uncommon Universes? And I said, oh, no, I completely forgot about that. And I talked it over with my business partners, and they said, that sounds awesome. So here we are. We're Uncommon Universes, and we love world building.
So, Janine, we are out of time, and I want to make sure that you say your final remarks for our listeners out there, because this show is always about encouraging authors and writers who want to write to pick up the pen to write. Now, you've given us a boatload of information about how to world build from the inside out. You have your book, World Building from the Inside Out, available on Amazon. You have your publishing press that you are partners with your husband and some other people called Uncommon Universes. There are avenues here for writers, but they are afraid to pick up the pen and write. I want you to speak to those authors today and encourage them to pick up the pen and write with the talent that God gave them.
In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. God gave us words for a reason and a purpose. And we live in a culture where it is so easy to take the words for granted, to misuse them, to use them harmfully, and that temptation is very real. So there is such a need for good, edifying, uplifting, redemptive stories. There is such a need for good, redemptive, speculative fiction, Christian fiction that goes into those crazy science fiction and fantasy areas. There is a need for that, and I know it can be really intimidating sometimes. I get intimidated when I go on Amazon, and it's like, oh my goodness, there's so many books out here. Why do I bother? Who is going to care about what I write? There's so much noise out there. There's so much darkness. There's just kind of so much everything, and on top of that, there's poor grammar. But the thing is, we serve a powerful, amazing God, and so if he wants you to be heard and he wants you to reach people, even one person, that's important, that's valuable, and that's something that you need to pray about, and then the pen and get back to writing.
Janine, thank you so much for joining us for this edition of The Right Stuff. If people want to find you online, they can find you at Uncommon Universes. Where else can they find you at?
They can find me at JanineApolito.com.
And Janine, once again, thank you so much for being with us on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a lot of fun.
And we were talking today to Janine Ippolito. She is the author of World Building from the Inside Out. It is a fabulous, wonderful workbook for the author looking to world build their world, whether it's fantasy, sci-fi, visa punk, maybe even historical fantasy or historical fiction. You want to get this book, World Building from the Inside Out. It's a very unique take on how to build your world from the motivations of your characters, so what cultures they believe in, what their motivations are, their beliefs, their religion. You definitely want to get this book and learn how to build your world from the inside out. It's available online at Amazon.com. Also, Janine is at Uncommon Universes. It's a new press that is taking submissions for Christian speculative fiction. You definitely want to visit them at uncommonuniverses.com. Thank you so much for joining me for this edition of The Right Stuff. Don't forget, Ventral Vows, my third book in the Sins of the Flesh series, is available for pre-order online. Simply go to Amazon.com or go to my website, Parker J. Cole, click on a picture and pre-order your copy today. You want to get that because it's going to hit live on the 31st, and you definitely want to get a copy of that today. Thank you so much for joining me. You have a wonderful, blessed day, and I am the queen of Tuesday nights, Parker J. Cole.
Thank you for joining us for this edition of The Right Stuff. Follow Parker online at parkerjcole.com. To hear this show and other shows, visit the show archive at therightstuffradio.wordpress.com. We'll be back same time next week, 7 p.m. Eastern Time.